My dear compatriots, dear brothers and sisters, we can be proud of our army, whose modernization is now a reality. It is within this framework that we have decided on the coordinated and organized withdrawal of French forces from Ivory Coast. Thus, the camp of the 43rd Marine Infantry Battalion in Port Bouet will be handed over to the armed forces of Ivory Coast starting this January 2025.
France is now being kicked out of Côte d'Ivoire. Crazy. What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing good. It's a beautiful day. Thank you very much for stopping by. This is our very first video in 2025. I feel honored. I hope you had a good time. I hope you had a wonderful time with your family. Just make sure this year is not like the past year. You know, we all wake up after a new year, especially with New Year resolution. You know, this year I'm going to be at the gym every single day. This year I'm going to learn a new language. This year I'm going to travel. Please, guys, do travel. Traveling is very important. It's just, if not more important than going to school. And I'm being honest with you. Going to school is great. It gives you a salary. That's all it does. Okay? Now, reading and constructing your brain is another thing. It's completely different from going to school. Going to school is great. It gives you a job. Reading and developing your brain is something completely different, and many people don't do. Because most of us think once you've got a degree from school, you've got the brains. No, you don't. You just know what you need to know in your field. Traveling is beautiful. Learning is beautiful. Getting a nicer body is beautiful. Getting a stable family is beautiful. I hope y'all going to apply whatever you say. You know, new year, new me. Don't do that this year, man. Just do whatever you want to do. Stop wasting time of that lady that you promised you're going to marry. If you're not going to marry her, leave her alone. Let somebody else do the job. You know, get the house you say you're going to get. Go get it. Go do it. Let's go. My name is Zack. I know maybe you don't know who I am, but if you watch this video till the end, we're certainly going to love each other. Here we talk about most of the things. We talk about Africa. We talk about different countries. We talk about Congo, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, South Africa. We are in Côte d'Ivoire. Yes, Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire has kicked out French troops. Shocking. Major shocker. Why? Because Côte d'Ivoire is a great partner of France in Africa. After Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, now Côte d'Ivoire. It's crazy. Last month, Chad also kicked out the French.
The decision to withdraw French troops is an exclusively sovereign decision with regard to Chad. And we felt that after several decades of independence and proclamation of the Republic, it was no longer useful to have a foreign military base in our homeland.
The president of Chad right now is the son of the previous president. The previous president was a good friend of the French. Now, the French were very surprised to see that the son has kicked them out. They say goodbye. Shocking. So it's a bad year for France. Now, Ivory Coast has announced that French troops will leave the country this month after a decade-long military presence, welcoming the latest African nation downscale military ties with its former colonizer. Now, how did the French get into these countries in Africa, you ask yourself? Well, the reason why French came into these countries, let me just remind you here that in 1885, Europeans came together sitting in Berlin, dividing Africa. You know, we used to be one big continent. Your country never existed. So don't get too proud. My country. What is country? There's no such thing as a country. If you take an aeroplane, you look down, you look for that line, you will not see it. It doesn't exist. White people created it in 1885. Yes, there used to be tribes. There used to be clans and groups and families. There was no such thing as countries. That's why you see your language is spoken in the next country. Those are your people. Whether you don't like them or not, they are your people. Okay, let's continue. French people came in the 1960s, along other Europeans, taking over Africa, separating Africa into small blocks that they called countries. Now, at that time, in 1960, when they left Africa, the French signed the paper with most of these Francophone African countries. The paper said we're going to leave our presence, our military presence in your country, even though we're leaving you for good. We're also going to make sure that we print your money. That is how France kept its influence into African nations. And most of these African nations speak French as an administrative language. And it's very sad because in these French Francophone countries, the better you speak French like a white man, the more you are considered. That's just the reality of it. Anyway, let's continue. The president, Alassane Ouattara, said that the French soldiers have to leave the country this month. It's a shocker. This is a shocker because Ouattara is a very good friend of the French. He's a undeniable ally of the French in Africa. Why would he say to the French to leave? Question mark. Now, there's something very interesting happening because back in time during election, Ouattara was facing Laurent Gbagbo. Laurent Gbagbo was not liked very much by the French because he was an African for African. Ouattara was very balanced. He also was allowing French to come and do business in the country. During election, Laurent Gbagbo allegedly won the elections. And then when the results came out, they said he lost. Now, Gbagbo, a former president of an African country, said, please, let's recount the vote, just to be 100% sure. Let's recount the vote. You know what happened? A French airplane, went bombing the palace of Laurent Gbagbo. Laurent Gbagbo, a former president of a country, said the election is over and I believe I won. Can we just recount the ballot? A French aeroplane went to his palace and bombed his palace. Now, how did the French do that? Because they had a military base in Côte d'Ivoire. Now African countries are tired of that and they've asked them to leave. You must leave. Now let's get back on track. Why would Côte d'Ivoire now ask the French to leave if Ouattara was actually put into power by the help of the French? The French helped them get in power by bombing the house of Laurent Gbagbo. Why would he now ask them to leave the country? Côte d'Ivoire is going to hold elections this year. Now, the sentiment of having French soldiers in the country is not very much liked by the people. A lot of people want a revolutionary president. Somebody who's going to say, enough of colonialism. Now, could this be a move by the president to keep the vote going on his side? Because if he says, okay, people, I'm going to kick out the French as well, I think it's about time. Our army is strong enough to look after us. French soldiers who've been stationed here for decades to fight terrorism can now leave and go back to the country. People will go like, yeah, Mr. President, now he's awake, right? And then win the elections, right? That's a possibility. Then later on say, okay, we think things are difficult, we're going to bring back the French. It's a possibility. Now, fellas, it's also happening in Senegal. Senegal has also asked the French to officially leave on the end of the year speech by the president, which also is a shocker.
I have instructed the Minister for the Armed Forces to propose a new doctrine for cooperation in defense and security, involving the end of all the foreign military presences in Senegal from 2025.
The Senegalese government says the French have to leave. Now, we may think that the reason why Côte d'Ivoire asked French people to leave is because of the elections. They want to win the vote of the people. But in Senegal, there's no election happening. So why are the Senegalese kicking out the French? Good question. What is true, fellas, is it comes a time where there's an end to something. Everything that has a beginning has an end to it, unfortunately. Maybe the end has finally come for France, influence in Africa. France has kept its soldiers in Africa to project its influence. Now that the French soldiers have been kicked out of Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, Côte d'Ivoire, and Senegal, they only have 2 bases remaining, in Djibouti and in Gabon, where they have about 1,000 soldiers. And again, French president said in a speech in Djibouti that they're trying to re-strategize, finding a way of cooperating where everybody wins. I mean, why didn't you think about everybody wins all these years along? Only now that everybody's kicking you out that you say you want to find a strategy where everybody wins. It's a good question. And many of these countries that have kicked out the French have now turned their face toward Russia because they feel like they can have a win-win, respect relationship with Russia. Not a relationship where they need to tell you what to do. They talk to you like a child because they colonize you. How do you feel about this, fellas? Do you think Côte d'Ivoire is being honest by saying France must leave the country? Do you think they've really had the change of heart? Or do you think the president is playing a game? Because, truth be told, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, and some other countries, Nigeria, have been accused by Niger of rostering soldiers from France who are actually training what they call terrorists to go and destabilize them. Now, what about that? And also, we know one thing. When French soldiers were being chased out of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, France spoke a lot. There was a clear fight between them. It was mediatic. But this time around, where Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire is asking them to leave, there isn't much noise about that. It's very quiet. So it's a different. Let me know how you feel about this. It's always a great pleasure. God bless.